The J-Glove design is brilliant, as it's the only shooting aid on the market that will help a player grip, set up, and finish your shot. It includes a finger splint design that prevents premature flexion at the base of the finger joints. The J-Glove has a lot of functions. The first one is it spreads your fingers out for you naturally. The second, it never allows the ball to rest on your palm. As you see on the screen, if the ball is ever resting on your palm, your index finger will not touch the ball. The only way your index finger will touch the ball is if you roll it off your palm and onto your finger pads. This is a really important concept because now the ball is properly balanced in my hand, but also you notice my wrist is in full extension. If I ever put my wrist not in full extension, once again, my index finger will not touch the ball. The last and most important function is the J-Glove eliminates side-to-side wrist action. A lot of players flex their index finger too early. If I was to shoot the basketball and flex my index finger too early, you'll notice my wrist will finish outward, which is about what 95% of all players do. Some will flex their ring finger too early, which will cause their wrist to finish inward. Now, the J-Glove eliminates finger flexion because of the splint design, so that you can only finish with an open hand follow-through and your wrist on a frontal plane. As I like to tell people, the J-Glove is like a problem solver. It tells you what your flaws are. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to put on the glove, you're going to come back in the house and say, I've made more shots in the last 5 minutes than I've made in any training session. And it's true, because what it's doing is it's telling you what you're doing wrong. If you shoot better with the glove, you know you had inefficiencies in one of those areas in your wrist joint and creating that open hand follow through to allow you to shoot straight. Mixed with our Shooting Mechanics DVD, let the J-Glove be your problem solver or your shooting coach, which will save you money in the long run. Let's take a look at a few scenes of our Millennium Shooting Mechanics DVD. Now let's talk about a biomechanical concept that is rarely mentioned by trainers or coaches, and that is proper square wrist position prior to your release. I watch a lot of film footage of players, and most inconsistent shooters finish with their wrist finishing slightly outward. This is very common at all levels, and here's why. Most people don't realize the anatomy of the human hand has a natural flare of 10 to 15 degrees toward the outside of the lower arm. Without even knowing about the 10 to 15 degree natural flare of your wrist joint, most people teach to place their index finger in the center of the ball because it's comfortable. I told you I'd come back to refute this index finger concept. However, if you do not accommodate the natural flare of your wrist, then your wrist will not properly hinge in a frontal plane and will finish slightly outward, thus affecting the direction of your shot. Here's a great but simple teaching strategy to teach proper wrist positioning so that your hand and wrist joints are consistently working together in a straight plane. Take a black marker and draw a line from the middle of the wrist pointing towards the middle of the hand. Then draw another arrow from the middle knuckle pointing straight downward to the middle of the hand. Now you will notice that the point of the arrows are not lined up when in a relaxed position because of the natural 10 to 15 degree flare outward. In order to get the arrows to line up and to get your wrist to hinge correctly, you need to rotate your wrist in. Now let's take a look at that concept in an index finger grip. As you can see, the arrows are not lined up with your index finger in the center of the basketball. However, if you rotate your wrist inward so that your finger fork is now in the center of the basketball, the arrows will line up and now your wrist, hand, and elbow joint will be working together. Let's really go into detail on body alignment since it is usually taught the same way by coaches and trainers regardless of proper biomechanics. Now here's where I differ from most books or videos you may have seen in the past. Most people teach that you need to square your feet and shoulders when shooting the basketball in order to shoot it straight. I completely disagree with this teaching principle and preach that your feet should be slightly angled inward around 5 to 10 degrees. Some of you are screaming at your television right now saying that you won't be square if your feet aren't pointed directly at the rim. But actually, angling your feet inward will slightly help align your lead hip and your shoulder directly at your target line, forming a proper shooting line. Let's take a look at a few visuals and explain the term shooting line. On the screen, you will see that Tony's feet are slightly angled inward, and his hip, shoulder, elbow, and wrist joint are lined up relatively straight, forming a proper shooting line. A proper shooting line allows the joints to be working together, hinging smoothly through the whole entire shooting motion. However, on this screen, Tony's feet are square to the basket, and you'll notice that his shooting line is now skewed. Therefore, simple biomechanics tells me his various joints